Hello and welcome to special coverage from In the Money Media. PTF and JK back from Louisville, back from the Derby in our respective home offices, ready to talk about this race with you. This is a video brought to you by our friends at First. There is an amazing promotion, cool opportunity coming up for horsemen, for horse players. It's called the Grand Three. Here's what you need to know if you're a horse player. If you can come up with the cold superfecta for 3 races, the Preakness Stakes, the California Crown, that's the renamed Goodwood Stakes in the fall, and the Pegasus World Cup, you have a chance to win, just $5 million. I wouldn't be too upset with that. You can also win individual prizes in each contest. It starts Preakness Day. You're going to need to put in your best idea of that superfecta, and you're going to find that link either on the First website or through the pretty link we created in themoneypodcast.com/grand. JK, you going to take a swing at the money here?
Well, not the owner's money, because I don't have a horse that can win the Preakness, but the superfecta contest seems kind of interesting. That's definitely worth a shot.
Let's talk about this year's Derby, JK. We do not have rights for video. We did grab some screenshots. We're hoping this one's in off the goalpost, folks. I want to talk through the race, starting with the very first frame. JK, you chose these slides. What do you see in this one?
Well, I mean, the first one, I think, is when the Kentucky Derby favorite hops a little bit at the start. It's a notable situation. I didn't notice it live, but it's hard to notice anything live. Except for the guy who was complaining that we were standing next to his box because he paid way too much for his box. And then he was mad that people were standing next to it. And then I told him that I've been coming to this Derby for 13 years and this is never going to change. So get over it. So I was a little distracted at the start of the race, but yeah, I mean, look, he hopped a little bit, but like you'll see eventually in these pictures, we'll see, I don't think anyone was overly affected by the start of the race. And I don't think Fierceness could ever really look at that hop as necessarily an excuse for why he ran the way that he did.
I tend to agree. It is interesting simply because Duke Matisse on the shows had noticed that there'd been seemingly minor gate things. This was on the Pro Player show, seemingly minor gate things in the no-show starts of Fierceness. So in retrospect, it is interesting to note that this fits that pattern. But as we'll see going into the first turn, which I'll bring up now, what did you think here, JK? This is a trip you and I described many times when we were playing race design in front of various audiences, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the same situation where I said if he gets a clean trip and he doesn't have anyone in his way, he'll win for fun. So that obviously, went out the window. But honestly, at that point, at that current point of the race, I looked at my wife and I said, he's got absolutely no excuse. If he's who he thinks if he is who we think he is, he'll win. And we all know that didn't happen.
Let's switch it to the overhead real quick, JK. This is really basically the top view of the shot we just saw. What did you think was interesting about this view?
Well, I mean, I think that when I watched the race live, look, you know how it is when you're watching the Derby. You only try to find the horses that have any significance in what you have going on. Mystik Dan had no significance in anything, not an underneath, not fifth, not nothing for me. And so during the race, and even the immediate, watching the race after, I was looking to see where my horses went wrong. And I never noticed how close Mystik Dan was.
Yeah, that's him in the green down there at the rail, by the way.
Right, in the black and green, yeah. And one of the things we'll talk about, probably after we look through these slides, is this kind of conundrum I feel like Mystik Dan puts you in, on the fact that he was very fortunate. He had a lot of things go his way. He got an absolutely perfect trip that you want to give credit to Brian Hernandez, sneak peek, who should be on JK+1 this week. You want to give credit to Brian Hernandez for the ride that he gave. But you also need to recognize moving forward that Mystik Dan was fortunate. However, he was close to a pace that if you look now at all the horses that are forward, close to where Mystik Dan is, down on the rail in the black and green, and you start looking at horses, Track Phantom, Fierceness, Resilience, all these
every other horse around him. Pay attention when we look at the end result of the race and pay attention where Track Phantom is. And now how about here, JK? I love this. Brian Hernandez, when you talk about, sometimes you talk about a horse that gets a perfect trip or a dream run through or didn't have a straw in his path thing. it's not really appropriate here in that Brian Hernandez did an amazing job to keep his horse where he did amidst all the chaos, including right here, where from this view to me, and maybe this is why you wanted to show this, I'll let you opine, but looks like he's about to go through a hole that isn't there.
Absolutely. And you'll see on the next clip that he did. But on this clip, I do want to show one more thing here, Pete, on this one. The reason I like this shot is because when you're looking at a game that's all about inches, and in a minute you'll see the inches we're talking about, especially inches in terms of like legacy building, Kentucky Derby wins for Chad Brown, considering that like someone like Steve Asmussen, it's been so elusive. These inches really do matter when building that legacy through your career. You'll look at Sierra Leone right here, and he has to check. This is the first time he had to check before he went outside and ended up going wide. When you look at it in hindsight, there's a lot of things that happen in the stretch, but this also could have been that inch that Sierra Leone needed that he lost when he lost that momentum here. So I wanted to just show this part where he checked.
I wish I could circle it. I don't have that tech skill, but he's in about 12th in the dark blue. They almost look black silks with that trio of horses around him running up on heels, basically. Is that what you're describing?
Absolutely, yeah, and the navy blue right there. I think that's Forever Young right to his outside.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. It was not an ideal run through. Anytime you're going to lose momentum in a spot like that, it gets very tricky. Now, here's a great image that we want to show. This is just seconds after what we just showed. And look down there on the inside. I described it as a hole that wasn't there. This is shades of Calvin Burrell stuff, JK. Hernandez just keeping him glued to the rail and almost willing him through. It almost looks like there's contact between him and Track Phantom there on his outside, but he obviously gets through the hole, or we'd be having a very different conversation. What did you think about this image?
Well, I mean, I just think it shows who Brian Hernandez is. He's got a lot of courage. Yeah, he did it with Mystik Dan previously, but he stayed in that spot and he made the difference. If you Pete, if you want to go back to that image, if you look where Brian Hernandez is down on the rail, the two horses that he ends up in the photo with are in the 5 path. You'll see right out there, right outside of the red silks with the white star, you'll see those maroon silks of Forever Young. And then at the bottom of that image, you'll see Sierra Leone in the navy blue. So when it comes to, like I said, a situation of inches at the wire, this decision by Brian Hernandez and Mystik Dan made all the difference and is the only reason that situation worked out the way that it did, in my opinion.
I'm skipping now into the stretch because the next still we have is at the wire, and we're seeing this controversial stretch run. I wish we had a proper head on. This is a borrowed tweet from our friends at World Horse Racing. Credit where credit is due, but you can see Sierra Leone, his own worst enemy, in my opinion. This isn't Tyler hurting or anything like that. This is Sierra Leone. He was well out in the clear. Forever Young holds a straight path from everything I've seen on both views. Sierra Leone, the horse, comes all the way in. Tyler's trying to straighten him out, but the horse gets him in so close. He's physically making contact with Forever Young. This is the kind of thing that is normally in racing regarded as an automatic disqualification. That level of contact that late in the race, with that little of a margin, obviously not meant to be. Let's keep the focus on the winner for now. I think, JK, we will we'll come back to the controversy, but I will just throw in there the idea that I think it's nutty. Anybody who thought Tyler was riding dirty here, to me, this was a clear case of the horse, not the rider, being a questionable actor. Would you opine briefly on that, and then we'll show this photo?
Yeah, no, riding dirty. Come on. You think about some of the things you've done in traffic when you're running a little bit late. You know, you've probably done some things you're not proud of, or at least I definitely have, in terms of cutting people off. And, you know, look, I don't think Tyler was doing anything dirty. I think he was trying to get to his left hand. In the biggest race of his entire life, he was trying to get to his left hand. Chad had said it. I actually saw him that night after the race, and he had said it. And he even said it in some interviews that the horse responds to the left hand, especially because he's got a habit of lugging in. And Tyler was simply just trying to get to his left hand. And I think that in the act of trying to do so, it looked as if he was like pushing. I don't think he was pushing him. I think he was just trying to find a way to get to his left hand. And you know, look, if Sierra Leone or Forever Young would have won, or if Sierra Leone would have won, obviously there probably would have been a little bit more of a conversation. But I heard the writer on Forever Young just said that you know, they didn't feel the need to call it.
Don't mistake Japanese politeness for the N word on what is and isn't a foul. I mean, it doesn't matter what the intent was. The contact was made. It's a very clear DQ. I can't believe it didn't happen, but you know, that's life in the big city. And I don't want to take away from the winner. So let's get to that image now. We can debate the specifics of that here and elsewhere as time goes on. But that's how close it was on the wire, JK. What does this photo tell you when you look back at it?
I think it tells me I think it tells me two things. It tells me that it was a hell of a ride by Brian Hernandez, and he made every possible decision correctly that he could that made this the best weekend professionally and probably outside of family for himself and for Kenny McPeak and those involved. And I think that's an interesting point when we talk about riders and we talk about the decisions that guys make and switching. Owners will switch to IRAD or switch to Flavian or do this or do that. And I'll go back to what Angel Cordero said to me one time, that out of 10 races on a day, 7 riders, any rider in the room was going to win on that horse, but 3 of them, the riders really mattered. And in this race, it's very clear to me that Brian Hernandez mattered. That's the first thought that I get when I see that picture. The second thought I get is that Sierra Leone was best. And
interesting. I think you can make a case that Sierra Leone was third best, given that if he doesn't, this was not a bad race to get left, given the dynamics as you described that Mystik Dan, was able to overcome. I think there's an easy case that Mystik Dan was best based on dynamics. Interestingly, I also think there's a good case Mystik Dan was very lucky. And I think this is a case where you can hold both of those thoughts in your head. You can be lucky and you can run an incredible race. I think that definitely happened with him. Sierra Leone, I mean, in the sense that he was his own worst enemy, in the sense that if Sierra Leone stayed straight, he wins. If that's what you mean by best, I can see that. But I can't really see how you could say he was better than Forever Young, who got absolutely mugged and just lost a nose. If Sierra Leone throws the race away like he did by lugging, but doesn't come all the way up to Forever Young, I think Forever Young wins. If Sierra Leone just stays straight, I think Sierra Leone wins. So it is interesting. You can really make a case for all 3, but give me your reasoning for why you think Sierra was the best of the trip.
Well, I think Sierra Leone was best because he was wider than Forever Young coming off the turn, and he got checked coming off the turn. So those 2 things I were the things that got me just a little bit over the hump. I wouldn't argue with anyone who told me they thought that Forever Young was best. And I clearly want to be clear that I believe that Forever Young was second best. I believe that Mystik Dan was a very close third best in the race, and Brian Hernandez's decision helped him. Now, it's very close because, like I said at the beginning, Forever Young and Sierra Leone were further back, while Mystik Dan was closer to the pace. So really, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. All 3 of them ran really good.
It's a great one where reasonable people can disagree, and we'll be debating it for a long while. I'm excited to talk back to someone like Sean Borman, the way he looks at the world with pace dynamics. I bet you he's going to say we're tripping for suggesting that what you and I are, that there's any question that Mystik Dan was best. But I think it's a fun one to go back and look at. It was an exciting Kentucky Derby. Figure-wise, it didn't come back super fast. I think Time Form had it, I think, 118, which is like a 98 buyer. They upgraded Mystik Dan just the 1 point for the being close to the pace that you and I are upgrading him, I think, a little bit more for. But the other 2 horses obviously ran basically the exact same figure. Beyer, I think, had them all running about 100. Some private figure makers I've seen have it a little slower. Time will tell. And we're going to have a lot more conversation, not just about the Derby, but about the Oaks, about all of these undercard races. Check that out, audio only on the podcast side. InTheMoneyPodcast.com is one place you can go. Subscribe to the In the Money Players podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Obviously, we want you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And before we get out of here, want to plug this Grand 3 event. Again, it all starts at the Preakness, and the horse player part of it, you need to pick the Superfecta in 3 races: Preakness Stakes, California Crown, Pegasus World Cup. To get more information, go to the Preakness.com website or use our pretty link, InTheMoneyPodcast.com/grand. JK, thank you. And we'll be back very soon with much more coverage of the Preakness Stakes.